Hiya and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be making wholemeal bread. It was going to be rye bread, but I haven't got rye bread. So I'm going to state that this is a rye bread recipe, but I'm going to be using wholemeal flour. I've got here 2 tablespoons of warm water, and to that I'm just going to add 1 teaspoon of dry active yeast and 2 tablespoons of honey. So that's 1 and 2. And I'm simply just going to mix this. And when I finally combine this, and you need to make sure that the yeast and the honey is properly combined, I'm then going to leave it in a warm place to prove for about 5 to 10 minutes. Our yeast is nicely proven, so now we're ready to commence. I'm making a very small bread, yeah, something just to go in the oven. So this is going to require 250 grams of wholemeal flour. Now, as I said, this is a rye bread recipe, so if you're going to use or make, should I say, rye bread, then you need 50-50 of rye to strong wheat flour. So in that goes. Gonna make a nice little well in the middle. Add our yeast, including the foam. That's the best bit. Yep. And to this we're going to add half a teaspoon of salt. And just a little of warm water. Now this has got to be hand hot water, yeah? So just pour a little to start with, probably about 1/4 cup. And now I'm going to put my attachment on. Whoops, she says. Always have trouble putting these things on. Great. Now we need to put this on the lowest setting first, just to combine all the ingredients. Shift that there, so you can see. Just going to bring everything into the middle. Oops. And we're going to spin again. Oops. Okay, right. Now that's a very dry at the moment, so all we're going to do is add a little bit of water at a time to form a soft dough. Now I'm going to put it on high, about number 4, to mix everything together. So here we go. I'm going to turn that off. Sorry about that. I'm just going to have a quick feel of the dough. Yep, that looks like it's coming together, and you really want it so that you can squish it. Squish, yeah. So now I'm going to put that back on high, just to combine everything. Turn it down. And before I do that, I'm now going to leave it on number 2. This is 2 of 10. And I'm going to leave that for 5 minutes to knead. dough has had its 5 minutes of kneading, and halfway through that, what I did was, I'll show you, I actually took the dough off the hook and placed it back in the bowl. Just squash it down a bit, place it back in the bowl so it has a nice knead. So here is our dough. Right, now all we're going to need to do is just pour a little bit of olive oil at the bottom of the bowl. Give it a good coating of olive oil. Take some of that into your hands. Give your hands a nice little rub. And just literally just rub the dough. And that's all you need to do. Place it in our bowl. And cover it with a clean tea towel, of course. Put it in a warm place and leave it to prove for an hour. Right. Ooh, look at that. See? It's kind of like slightly risen. It's not going to rise too much, because remember we're using whole wheat flour. So, oh yes, we're going to just give that a little knock, just to knock out some of the air. Yep. Gonna take it out of its bowl. Put that to one side. And now, just get a little bit of olive oil in your hands. Oops, that was a bit too much. Just literally enough to coat your hands. Give that a little rub. Put it on the dough. And now we need to knead that just for a couple of minutes. And this we have to do by hand. I mean, you couldn't put it in the mixer, but I've already cleaned it. Try to make it into a nice shape. And I'm sure you could actually cut this and make little bread rolls with it, but I'm not going to. I'm just making a kind of like a French sticky kind of thing with my one today. Yep. Ooh. So, yep, that will do for me. Right, so that's going to go in the tin. And now this we will need to cover. Oops, let me just pinch that. It looks a bit odd shaped then. We need to cover that and leave that for another 45 minutes in a nice warm place. I forgot to state that when I put this in this tin, this particular tin, you don't need to oil it or, you know, butter it or anything like that. And it doesn't need lining. But if you have your tins and you do need to, then I suggest that you give it a little bit of oil and then put parchment paper around it and then put your loaf in. Okay, so now 45 minutes this is. Right. Look at that. Ooh, it's nicely risen, hasn't it? And it's gone all the way to the sides. So now I'm going to put this in an oven which I have preheated at 160 degrees. Now I think that this rye bread actually needs a higher heat, but it's because I've got the oven on cooking something else. I'm going to just stick it in at that temperature and see how it goes. So I'm going to bake this, and it should take about 20 to 25 minutes for that to cook. So see you then. Right, I've just taken this out of the oven. Look at that. Woohoo! Yeah, and about 25 minutes into that cooking, what I did was I just quickly put my hand in and gave it a little knock. Can you hear that? Yep. Now, when I did that 25 minutes ago, it wasn't like that, so I left it in for another 5 minutes. But now you can hear it. Hear that sound again? That means the bread is ready. So, as I said, these tins, you don't need to grease them, but if you do, I would leave it to cool in your tin for about 5 minutes before you turn it over. But I can just turn it over. As I said, this bread is a bit small. I only wanted a small bread, but look at that. Look at that. So now I'm going to put that on a wire rack. And I'm going to leave it to cool, and I'll come back to you guys when that's nicely cooled. Look at that. Our bread is nicely cooled, and it is cooled. I didn't do it too hot, so I'm going to have to cut this. Woo-hoo. Ooh, bit sticky at the bottom. Oh, look at that. Oh, see? Wow. Ooh. And it's meant to be kind of like a firm bread, because remember, this is a recipe for rye bread. So I'm going to take a nice slice of that. Oh, nice. Wow. Look. Ooh, nice. Mm-hmm. Mmm. Mmm. And the thing is, it's not a normal bread recipe. This is actually a recipe for rye bread. I think I'm going to be making these more often, and I make it in a bigger dough. Ooh. Mmm. 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 That is delicious. Look at that. Mmm. 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 This is good. Well, I'm off. I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to go and get some margarine to put on this. Woohoo! Until the next time, see ya.